February 1959. 9 experienced Soviet hikers set out into the northern Urals. They never came back. When search teams finally found them weeks later, the scene made no sense. Their tent had been slashed open from the inside. Not cut from outside by an attacker, from inside, by the hikers themselves. They'd fled into sub-zero temperatures wearing almost nothing. Some were found nearly a mile away, barefoot in the snow. 3 had massive internal injuries, crushed ribs, fractured skulls, but no external wounds. 1 was missing her tongue and eyes. And here's the part that gets buried. Some of their clothes tested positive for radiation. The official Soviet conclusion? Compelling natural force. That's it. No explanation of what that force was. No follow-up. Case closed for decades. But I've been going through the declassified reports, the autopsy photos, the witness testimonies that were sealed for 30 years. And the more you look at what actually happened on that mountain, the more it becomes clear. This wasn't a natural force. This was something they encountered. Something that terrified them so completely, they chose to die in the cold rather than stay in that tent. I'm going to walk you through what the evidence actually shows, because what happened at Dyatlov Pass wasn't an avalanche or hypothermia or any other explanation they've tried to sell. Something was on that mountain with them. The mainstream story goes like this. The Dyatlov group were students and graduates from the Ural Polytechnic Institute, experienced hikers. They were attempting a winter trek to Otorten Mountain, a route graded Category 3, the most difficult. On February 1st, they made camp on the slopes of Kholat Syakhl. That name, by the way, translates from the indigenous Mansi language as Dead Mountain. The Mansi avoided it, considered it cursed, but Soviet rationalism didn't care about local superstition. That night, something happened. The tent was found 3 weeks later, still partially standing, covered in snow. It had been cut open from the inside in multiple places. Long slashes, made by knives the hikers carried. Not torn, not ripped by wind or claws. Cut deliberately. The footprints leading away showed they left in socks or barefoot. No panic running, the prints were measured, walking in a line down toward the forest. They left behind their boots, their coats, in temperatures around -30 degrees Celsius. The first 2 bodies were found under a cedar tree, nearly a mile away, wearing only underwear. 3 more were found between the cedar and the tent, including team leader Igor Dyatlov. They died of hypothermia trying to crawl back. Then it took 2 more months to find the last 4. They were under 4 meters of snow in a ravine. And that's where it stops making sense. These 4 had catastrophic injuries. Lyudmila Dubanina had major chest fractures and was missing her tongue, eyes, and part of her lips. Semyon Zolotaryov had 5 broken ribs. Alexander Kolovatov had a deformed neck and major skull damage. The medical examiner compared the force required to that of a high-speed car crash, but there were no external wounds, no bruises, no cuts, just massive internal trauma. The official report said these injuries occurred after death from the pressure of the snow, but the pathologist's own notes say the force required would have killed them. So which is it? Let me show you what doesn't fit. First, the radiation. 3 of the victims' clothing samples tested positive for beta radiation, significantly above normal background levels. This detail was buried in the classified section of the files. Why were Soviet hikers in 1959 contaminated? The area wasn't a test site. The official dismissal says Kolovatov and Krivonishenko worked at nuclear facilities, so maybe they contaminated their own clothes. Except Krivonishenko's clothes weren't the radioactive ones. Dubanina's and Zolotaryov's were, and she was a 21-year-old economics student. Second, the nature of their injuries. A forensic expert named Boris Vozhrozhdeny stated the chest fractures were caused by extreme force comparable to a car crash, but without the surface damage that comes with blunt force trauma. No broken skin. The bodies weren't crushed by snow. They were crushed by something else. Something that applied even massive pressure. Third, witness testimony that was hidden for years. Yuri Yudin, the only survivor, he'd turned back due to illness before the incident, said the group had been told to report any strange sightings to the authorities. Why would a hiking trip require surveillance instructions? Another group of hikers, 50 kilometers south the same night, reported seeing orange spheres floating in the sky over Kholat Syakhl. Glowing orbs. They reported this to investigators, and it's in the file. There are also testimonies from Mansi reindeer herders and geologists in the area describing lights in the sky during that period. Not just one account, multiple independent witnesses. The head investigator, Lev Ivanov, later admitted he was ordered to close the case and that he believed the hikers encountered something not of this world. He saw the orange spheres himself during the search. That's the lead investigator. Fourth, the tent. If they'd been caught in an avalanche or sudden storm, they would have grabbed their gear. But the inside of the tent was orderly, boots lined up, food still stored. They cut their way out in a controlled manner and walked away. That's not panic, that's decision. They chose the cold. So, what does this mean? If you take the evidence at face value, the radiation, the spheres, the internal injuries without external force, the way they fled from something instead of toward safety, you're left with a scenario the Soviet government couldn't allow into the official record. This was 1959, height of the Cold War. The military was testing weapons in the Urals. There were missile programs, experimental aircraft, possibly even unconventional technology we still don't have full records on. Some researchers believe the hikers stumbled onto a weapons test. The orange orbs could have been parachute mines or fuel-air explosives. The shockwave from such a device could cause the kind of internal injuries Dubinina and Zolotaryov had. The radiation fits if they were exposed to a low-yield detonation or propellant. The group sees the launch or explosion, realizes they're in a test zone, and flees the tent before they're caught in the blast radius. But that doesn't explain why they'd cut the tent and walk away calmly instead of running. It doesn't explain the missing tongue or eyes, unless that's predation after death, which the autopsy suggested it wasn't. The tissue was removed, not chewed, and if it was a weapon test, why has no military documentation ever surfaced? Even after the Soviet collapse, nothing. The other scenario was harder to fit into the frame we're given. The one Ivanov, the investigator, believed before he was told to bury it. That the hikers encountered something non-human. The orbs weren't missiles, they were craft. The pressure that killed them wasn't a shockwave. It was something else. Directed, precise. The fear that drove them out wasn't rational. It was primal. You don't cut through your tent and walk into a frozen forest unless staying in that tent means something worse than death. And when you look at how they died, spread out, trying to return, but only after something had already broken them, it reads like exposure to something that didn't just scare them. It incapacitated them. The radiation, the missing soft tissue, the lights, it fits the pattern of other incidents from that era. Encounters that got classified. Witnesses who were told to stay silent. Events that got rewritten as natural disasters or accidents. Here's what I keep coming back to. The Soviet Union had every reason to explain this. They ran the investigation. They controlled the narrative. If it was an avalanche, they'd say avalanche. If it was a crime, they'd find a criminal. But instead, they wrote compelling natural force and locked the files for 30 years. They closed the area to hikers and expeditions for 3 years after. No public explanation, just silence. And when the files finally came out, they were incomplete. Photographs missing, witness statements redacted. The diary entries from the hikers stopped the day before. You're telling me 9 people kept detailed journals for the entire trip, then nothing on the last day? Either they didn't write or someone removed it. Dyatlov Pass is one of those events where every rational explanation has a hole in it, and the irrational explanation has the evidence. The missing tongue wasn't scavenging. The pathologist ruled that out. The radiation wasn't occupational. Wrong people, wrong levels. The injuries weren't avalanche or snow pressure. No external trauma. The lights weren't flares. Too many witnesses. Too consistent. The fear wasn't hypothermia confusion. They moved deliberately. What happened on that mountain didn't fit the world we're told exists, so they wrote it off and moved on. But if you're still thinking about it after hearing this, that's the part they couldn't erase. The feeling that something's missing. that we're not getting the real story. If you want to go deeper, look into the declassified autopsy reports, especially Dubinina's. Look into the other expeditions in the Urals during the 50s and 60s that had strange encounters. There are more. And ask yourself why a simple hiking accident needed to be classified for 3 decades. Sometimes the questions are the only honest thing left.